What is an inhuman haunting? It might not be what you think. We'll find out how I define it right now on What the Fetch. Hey Weirdos, I'm Grant. This is the fourth video in a series where I define the 4 categories I use to classify hauntings. For the rest of them, click here. So, inhuman hauntings. I'm gonna need you to open your minds up for this one, guys. To put it simply, an inhuman haunting is any haunting caused by something that has never been human. So this category encapsulates a lot of extreme examples that overlap folklore and strong belief systems. Historically, what they are and where they came from is hotly debated and the fodder for arguments, fights, and even war. I don't want any of that here, so I'll try to keep it simple and not offend anyone. The chances of you encountering an inhuman haunting are rare. That being said, many of the cases I get are of this type because people don't know how to handle them. So here are a few of the most common types. Unlike the other videos in this series, I'll talk about how to deal with them as I go along rather than waiting till the end of the video. Okay, strap in, here we go. I'm gonna start with positive entities. These are basically any non-human entity that provides overwhelmingly positive support. Not just the comforting feeling you get from having dead Uncle Fred's overwhelming personality around you again. It's not like someone handing you a plate of tater tots. We're talking about life-changing positivity here. Although that comes pretty close. In fact, some refer to these as angels. For some people, the word angel conjures up an image of a flaxen-haired being, clothed in brilliant white robes, with a halo of righteous light burning bright atop their crown, and soft feathery wings spread triumphantly behind them. Oh, and don't forget the harp. Gotta have the harp. Doesn't make any sense without the harp. While this image is beautiful and comforting, try to erase it from your head for a minute. Because in my experience, positive entities don't seem to belong to or subscribe to any particular religion. They can aid anyone from any belief system. Most positive entities are never actually seen. And in the few cases when they are, they seem to take on a much more subtle, even symbolic form. And because most people are expecting that brilliant being, people can misinterpret a potential positive entity as something dark and even evil, when it's the positive entities that are actually exposing that darkness. I personally have never seen a positive entity that I know of. Okay, maybe one. But I truly feel that at several points in my life, something overwhelmingly positive was present. And my response to it undeniably affected my life for the better. And I like to think it was more than just dead old Uncle Fred's spirit cheered me on. So, positive entities, what do we do about it? Well, nothing. I mean, I don't get people calling me complaining about an overwhelmingly positive presence in their home. I like to think that if you feel that you are being visited by a positive entity, that you're doing something right in your life. Or you're about to face a decision to do something right. Now, on the flip side of that are negative entities. Now, these are the opposite side of the spectrum. Essentially a non-human entity that is extremely negative. Now, I'm not talking about someone stealing your plate of tater tots. While that is pretty heartless, I'm talking about truly evil and manipulative forces. Some people like to call them demons, but I don't like to use that term because the term itself is empowering to the negative entity. And empowering a negative entity is the last thing you want to do. I mean, come on. When I say demon, you immediately picture a massive dark form with some combination of horns and cloven hooves. Maybe even leathery bat wings. Basically the Balrog from Lord of the Rings. I don't want to face that thing in somebody's home. Using the term negative entity doesn't automatically conjure up the aforementioned image. An image that was built quite literally to put the fear of God in us in order to help keep us on the right path. And again, like positive entities, negative entities don't seem to belong to or subscribe to any particular religion. In my experience, the more you are afraid of these things, the more hold they seem to have over you. So instead of picturing a huge lumbering horned demon that could pull even the greatest of wizards into darkness, I prefer to picture a short, wafer-thin Poindexter with broken glasses whose butt I could kick all day if I needed to. Now they can appear as just about anything, but you'll feel their influence more than you'll actually see them. The goal of a negative entity seems to be to wear down your will to the point where you allow it to take you over. This process follows a very predictable and reversible series of events I call the path of possession. That's another video. Zoinks! Now, before you start shaking in your proverbial boots, these things don't just jump out of a dumpster in an alley one day and now suddenly you're haunted by a demon. They're more like a lion chasing gazelle. They don't chase after the strong. They go for the weak and the sick. They aren't interested in the healthy ones. If you're living your life well, you're socially active, you're not obsessed or addicted to anything, basically not doing anything jail-worthy, you'll most likely never encounter a negative entity. So what do we do about them? Well, you really need to know your stuff here. This is a completely different ballgame. Getting rid of the negative entity is actually the easy part. This is the fascinating thing about negative entities. Religious provocation of any kind works every time. And I stress, any kind. Be it Christian, Jewish, Muslim, Buddhist, shamans, you name it. I mean, in my experience, I've never had it fail. But it has to be a genuine belief system. And that belief system has to align with the homeowner's beliefs. Now, I don't think the power is as much in the ritual per se, as it could be in the fact that most people will never feel more empowered than when they believe that their God and all creation is on their side. Again, getting rid of the negative entity is the easy part. Keeping it away is the hard part. You don't ever destroy a negative entity, it seems. You just sort of push it away to buy the client time to turn their life around. Remember, this thing came around due to a problem with the client's lifestyle. You have to help the client to reform that lifestyle so that they're not appealing to this type of entity again. You have to make them a healthy gazelle again. Due to the sensitive nature of the client's lifestyle and what brought this about, a negative haunting should always be dealt with privately, because a client can't really heal if the whole world knows about their problem. Now, there is a lot more to say about negative entities. I'm just brushing the surface here. But don't worry, I'll get more into the gritty details in future videos. Next we have elementals. Elemental entities are not particularly good or bad. They come in a stunning array of shapes and sizes, but when seen are most commonly a 3-foot tall or shorter dark form. They go by many names, but the most common name would be fairies. Now, I know what you're thinking here. Bear with me. We're not talking about Tinkerbell. I personally have had significant exposure to this type of entity, much more than the average Joe. Many people would love to see them, but most people can't or don't. But it wasn't always this way. Exposure to elemental entities appears to have been much more common in past times, as seemingly every culture on the globe has mentioned them in their histories. That's got to be worth something. Elementals are inherently tough to talk about because of the social stigma we've attached to the term fairies. Any real knowledge we may have once had about them has been reduced to the stuff of children's stories. I mean, the term fairy tale itself is synonymous with a children's story, or the encounters were twisted and used as tools to scare children into behaving properly. This, combined with their irregular appearance and indifferent behavior, makes them hard to understand, further clouding our knowledge base on them and stigmatizing them as bad, evil, or even demonic. But in my experience, they tend to be concerned solely with their own endeavors. Sometimes we factor into their plans, but most times we don't. Usually, if they're interrupting your life, it's because they want your behavior to change for some reason that suits them. Again, not good or bad, just indifferent. So what do we do about elemental activity? Typically, the best advice with elementals is to wait them out. They will typically eventually give up, but in rare situations, they can take it to the extremes. Knowing when they're most likely to go to extremes is tricky and needs to be taken very seriously. Again, I'm just scratching the surface here. There's a lot to talk about in another video. Well, there you have it. While these are just some of the types of intelligent hauntings, I feel like I've given you more than enough to think about right now. As mentioned before, I'll dive deeper into these topics in other videos, so we don't bite off more than we can chew. Crazy stuff, right? But please, try to keep the comments free from religious views and zealotous behavior on this one, guys. We really don't get anywhere that way. And don't forget to subscribe and click the notification bell. Thanks for stopping by, guys. Stay weird.